Hi, hey, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, now my finger still isn't doing real well, so I haven't been working on my power pack, my Ryobi power pack. But I have managed to do a little bit of work to my OSB wall. This is the area where my miter saw is going to sit. I have it sitting right here right now, but it's going to sit on a shelf in here with a drawer underneath for dust collection. And this is going to be kind of the start of the shroud around the miter saw to help contain all that sawdust that it creates. So, but that's another story. The trick here is I'm building this wall one piece at a time. I cut this piece and I put it on there. I cut this piece and I put it on here. And it's critical. Just like when you're building the carcass cabinet. You want everything to be square and plumb. Well, I want everything here to be plumb, and I want this to be square here and here. So when you're doing, and I put this all together using pocket hole screws and just screwed it right to the wall. Let me show you a couple of tricks how you can do it that way, so that way I can come back here, and if I decide this isn't wide enough a couple of years down the road to buy a new miter saw and I need to shift things, I can actually take one of these or both of these out, change my whole area right here without affecting the rest of it. And I can rebuild this if I want to, so I can put a bigger saw in here, theoretically. So the flexibility by doing it with all pocket hole screws only, and yet it still be strong enough. So, and I'm using some of the basic techniques that I've shown you. You know your regular pocket holes, where you just put them in on one side every so many inches apart. Then there's the toenail pocket hole joinery, which I showed you how to do it, and I haven't seen anybody else talk about that yet. I also showed you the super joint, the pocket hole super joint, where you use a longer screw, get it further back away from the edge of the board so that you have more meat between the head of the screw and the edge of the board. And it makes that screw hold even stronger then. And we talked about that. And so today I'm going to show you an example of why we use it one place and not in another again, just so you get a rough idea of when to use and when not to. Because just because you know how to use all these different joints doesn't mean you want to do all of them. It depends on what the job is at hand that you're going to have when you get done. Just like with dovetails, do you use a two tail on the board, put three tails on it? Do you use through dovetails? Or same thing with pocket hole joinery. There's decisions you can make based on what you want the job to do. So the other thing is I also talked about, I'm going to start talking about is rabbet pocket joints. And I know what you're thinking, what the hell is that? Well, you come back and I'll show that to you. And it's actually pretty handy. I've been using it, and actually it's kind of a handy joint to use too. So we'll show you that and how to use it. And it's just another technique of using pocket hole joinery. So you may have figured it out just by the name, but otherwise you'll have to stay tuned to figure that one out, because I'll show it to you sooner or later. So to put this up here, put these three pieces in particular up, straight, and square is what's critical. Well, this one's easy. You just put a cleat on underneath side, you stick it up there, screw your pocket holes in, and then you have this attached to the wall nice and level. And you screw it up by putting either a bracket like this under it, or a whole piece of wood if you're trying to build a carcass for a cabinet or something. So this piece here is real important that it is not only square to this wall here, straight up and down here, square here, and it's square this way. It's just everything has to come together exactly right. So when I put this piece on and this piece on, I have a nice square carcass to build my shelves and things like that on the inside, like you would on any cabinet. So how do I get these on the wall using pocket hole screws? Trying to hold that there and get that pocket hole screw, it can be a challenge. So when I'm putting the vertical piece in, what I do is, this one isn't fastened down. So I prep the work by putting pocket hole screws in it where I decide I want to put them all. And I have one here, and I have one on the other side next to this one. So instead of putting them both on one side, I put one over here and one here. And I put these about 12 inches apart all the way down, one on each side. So I have 4 points of toenail attachment on this that will attach it to the wall. I also have 2 pocket holes here and one on this side to attach it to this shelf. And when I put it in there just right, it'll square up for me. The way you square it is, at the bottom, you'll see right down here, I put a cleat that touches the floor, and it's an exact measurement to where the bottom of this board is going to be. So the distance between here and here is the length of this board. I also put a cleat here, which is the outside edge of this board, so that I get the exact measurement from the outside here to the outside here is the same, and everything is parallel by this cleat being here. So now all I have to do is put this board in place. It only took a couple of brad nails to put these up and level, and then I just push it in place. Now when I go to fasten it down, keep in mind, put the pocket hole screws in from this side first, a couple of them, and that will pull it tighter to the cleat. If you go from the other way, it'll move away from the cleat. So make sure you do these first, then do two on the other side. At that point, you can do the rest of them then, no problem. And it'll stay vertical and square and be right where you want it when you're done. Perfectly plumb. So, and then when you get done, pull the cleat off, pull all your brad nails out, and move on. You're not going to see the brad nail holes, quite honestly, with OSB. So, that's another thing I like about using it, is that a lot of the things are pretty closely to be hidden without any problem. So, anyway, so that makes it easy to do cabinetry. Now, super joint. The pocket hole super joint, if you remember, is just a longer screw. And you set the shoulder further away from the edge of the board so that it goes through and it gives you more meat from the head of the screw to the edge of the board to make it stronger. Up here, I recommended pocket hole joints with super joint. And that's because this piece here that bolts to the shelf and to the wall, the distance from the bottom to here is pretty close to what the distance is from here to here. So when you put weight on the outside of this shelf, it's going to want to pull away from that wall. Well, down here, you don't have that. Because down here, this only sticks out about 16 inches, but it's 4 foot long. So all of these screws will make this board much more difficult to tip out away from the wall at the top because there's so many more screws here. So I elected to not use a super joint here, but I did use it there, and that's why. So again, super joint, you can use it at times, and other times you're not going to need it. So keep that in mind. This is how you put them in place. When I get done, everything will be nice and square. And if I ever want to change it, it'd be easy enough to take the pocket screws out, pull the pieces off that I need to, and redo what I have to do. It makes this whole OSB wall pretty easy and actually makes it pretty versatile so that as my needs change over the years, I can change how this is put together. Or if I want to add something that I hadn't thought about before, it's easy enough to do. Some of these miter saw stations, good luck with making changes to those after you get done. And a lot more money wrapped up. So let's talk about, the other thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about pocket holes and hiding them in plain sight. And then we're going to talk about pocket hole plugs, okay? So let's go over here. Let me just pick you up. And we're going to go over here to the shelf area right here. And I have right here my pocket hole joinery. And I can change the height of this pretty quickly and easily based on what height I put this at. So as you can see here, I kind of moved this higher and higher so you can see. This is the highest point and this is the lowest point. And these are all a 1/4 inch apart from height changing. So you can get an idea of what it looks like. So if you put these in here, and let's say I put 3 of them in here instead of just 2, that you would see easily on the outside of your box. But if I do this, but I've only used these 2 for pocket holes, put a plug in all 3 of them with a little wood burning, I could turn that into either a flower or into a little campfire look. And so I embellish it. And what I do is I hide that pocket hole in plain sight. So by adjusting the height of this, you can actually hide these really in plain sight. But there's one more problem that you have to think about, and that is that if you look at this, I have 3 holes here, and I just told you what I was going to do. Put 2 screws in and 3 pocket hole plugs. The only problem is, believe it or not, do you know that it will cost you more money for those 3 plugs than it did for those 2 screws to do this? It's true. I looked up the pricing of the screws and plugs, and you're also very restricted as to what species you can get, and it goes up pretty fast. All that is just a 3/8 dowel. If you take a standard 3/8 dowel from a big box store, you know, that goes right into the hole. Then you can just take and cut it off with a flush cut saw, and it's plugged. So if you put glue on it, shove it in, cut it off, you're ready to go. And you could do your plugs this way. So you just cut a bunch of pieces off, 1.5 inches long, stick them all in there, let them dry, and then cut them all off. Or if you start with something closer to this, this is 1 3/4 inches long. Then when you stick this in there, like so, and you cut it off flush, you end up with a second plug out of the cutoff, and you can put it in the next block. Makes it easier, and so I got 2 plugs out of 1 2-inch piece of dowel. That gets pretty cheap in a hurry. So all you got to do is either buy dowel, and if you want to do it in a special wood yourself, buy something, get a steel plate, make your own dowel maker, drill some holes in it. There's lots of things out on the internet that show you that stuff, and you can make your own. I myself, if you remember, I have this set right here, which they call this a tenon cutter. Has a hole in the center and it cuts out. This one's the 3/4. This is 1 inch. Well, guess what? The one down here, that's a 3/8. So guess what? I can actually use that to make 3-inch long dowels, and I can make that out of virtually any kind of wood I want. When I get done, I can have any color wood plugs for my pocket holes. So quick and easy. Make your own pocket holes. They're cheap. I showed you a couple ideas of how to put them in plain sight. The other thing to think about is that if you take this and you're embellishing it with pocket hole slots, but you don't want them to look like pocket hole slots, believe it or not, if I take this, put one in straight up and down here, and then I take this one, put it in there at the right place, so I line up one of these pocket holes up to come out exactly right, clamp this down and put this one in, I can actually put this pocket hole straight and put this one in at an angle along with this one so that it makes a point. They all are pointing. So I can line these up in all different ways and put this design anywhere I really want, as long as I have a big enough clamp. So there's lots of ideas once you start playing with moving these around, putting them on one plane going uphill, maybe back downhill the other way, draw a little car so it looks like it's going over mountains. Just hundreds of ways to embellish it, either with woodworking, wood burning, or with some kind of inlay, string inlay. You can do so many things. So don't be afraid of pocket holes, and don't be afraid to put them on the outside. They do hide in plain sight pretty nicely. So keep this in mind. Hopefully these will be helpful tips for you. If you have any questions or any comments about any of this, or you want to give a suggestion on what you do with pocket holes, leave them in the comments. We all would love to hear about it. So I hope you liked this video, or you learned something here. If you did, hit that like button. Most importantly though, come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you again very soon.